Welcome to another episode of Carbon Ether Podcast where knowledge meets understanding. I am the astute Sharif Prescott, and sitting with me today, our guest celebrity is Russ Ooh, great friend of mine. How you doing, Mr. Russ?
I'm good, thank you, sir.
Good to have you. Good to have you. I want to say real quick before we begin, he's white.
Last time I checked.
Oh yeah, what are you doing with these black people, man? Oh hell! Look, it's unbelievable to be loved by you. Anyway, let's get started. Off camera, we was talking about self-actualization, self-realization. Could you give us a little bit of background on that, or what that entails, the psychology behind it?
Well, I'm not a psychologist for sure.
Okay.
Really, the whole concept is just being aware of yourself. Being, the old saying, "Know thyself," is true, and it's important, probably more than anything else. I think, in my opinion, that you understand and know yourself.
Yeah, when you, I would say, I would agree, because once you understand and know thyself and the greatness that you possess, then you can exert that into the world and the universe. And I guess self-actualization, self-realization just falls hand in glove, or what have you, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Oh, okay. So, how would you say that played in your everyday life, given that you are a veteran, traveling the world?
Mm-hmm. Well, you become quite aware of your strengths and weaknesses in the military.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody who's been in the military knows. You learn to rely on others, and you get to know others sometimes better than they know themselves.
Well, I can only imagine. My military was running those streets back in my prime.
Get to know people there too.
Yeah, it was good to know people there. But being that you were in the military, going to different countries,
Mm-hmm.
how does that compare and contrast to being from America and then going and living abroad? What does America look like to all the other developed countries you've been to?
Well, that's a huge story, and probably not so much from the military. When I was in the military, I was stationed in Germany.
Okay.
Where I met my now wife. And that was a wake-up call. I had some experience with the German language in school.
Oh, okay.
And then learned a great deal while I was there. Lived over there for, 3 years originally, went back for 3 more after I got married.
Okay.
But my experience living abroad really came from when I became a teacher.
When you became a teacher.
Mm-hmm.
So, did you become a teacher abroad, or did you become a teacher here?
No, it was a little of both, actually. My wife, the story started with my daughter, actually. We were looking for a school for my daughter. And we had looked at several different alternative forms of education.
Okay.
Steiner schools, Montessori schools, that sort of thing. Wound up where we lived, they didn't have a Steiner school, which is a whole...
Just so the audience can understand, what is a Steiner school?
Well, both of those forms of education take a much different format. They're similar and yet dissimilar in different ways, but same basic concepts. It's a child-led system.
Okay, pedagogy.
In other words, the children sort of determine their direction under the guidance of the teacher. The teacher doesn't take a center position. It's not the traditional, what most folks are used to, which is teacher sits at the front and tells everybody what to do. They do it, they go home. This is a much different kind of philosophy.
Does it work?
Oh, it works.
Is it successful?
It's very successful.
Okay.
Anybody who's been involved. And then there's caveats to everything. I think that we used to say Montessori, for example, in our case, we ended up going to a Montessori school for my daughter. My wife got trained and went on to become a teacher first.
Okay.
And that's sort of what pulled me in that direction. But we always would say it was right for every child, but it wasn't right for every parent.
What do you mean?
Well, Um, Children are very open to everything, for the most part. They have the ability and are born with the ability to absorb and to gather information and to learn. The system that we kind of call traditional system, like you and I went through, is really kind of dictated by the teacher and whatever their thoughts and processes and curriculum are, that's what's taught to the children. In a Montessori setting, we present lessons to children and then let them go and experiment with the things that we have. And it's a very hands-on type system. It's not, there isn't a set schedule or set curriculum. There aren't workbooks and worksheets and things that are given to them. It's much, much different.
With that system, do you think that system would work here? Or do you think
Montessori, you mean?
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. It works here all the time. That's basically, without going into the whole history of Montessori and how all of that took place, it really started overseas and then was brought to the US. The US picked it up. They became very interested. They started training teachers. And there are two main bodies of Montessori, the Association Montessori International and the American Montessori Association. You'll hear them referred to as AMI or AMS.
Okay.
Started in the same way. And so the system works very, very well, regardless of where it goes and what materials and things that they use. There are some schools that have a great deal of curriculum as far as materials and things, not as far as a set program. And then there are others that are schools in places like Africa that are impoverished places where they don't have a lot of money to purchase materials and things. Shoot, they use sticks and rocks and shells and all kinds of things. And the way it's taught, it works the same.
Okay.
So they can still obviously go through the program as well.
Okay. Well, awesome. So what do you think about America's current state with talking about the Board of Education? I mean, not the Board of Education. Yeah, being on the chopping block for the country, dismantling.
I've seen lots of changes. Now, understand, I was gone from the United States probably 15 years.
Living abroad outside
living
of the
abroad
military?
in different countries and as a teacher. There's been tremendous changes. I don't know that I necessarily agree with many of the changes. I don't disagree with some of the changes that were made. In talking to many teachers over the years, I see that teachers are becoming more and more unhappy with the way things are.
Oh, yeah.
They're getting out. They're having difficulty finding new teachers to get in. In my area, in Montessori, we didn't have those kinds of conflicts because we didn't have these set curriculums that were changing and altering.
Let me ask you this real quick, not to interrupt your wisdom. For our stars watching, what's the purpose of a government written out or government designed curriculum? Because doesn't that restrict you guys from like teaching? Like you're gonna teach history, you're gonna teach math, you're gonna teach English, you're gonna teach geography. Mm-hmm. But why does the government come in, create a curriculum, and then you're not allowed to deviate and even add your own spin to it?
Well, you're talking probably about two different systems. So Montessori, Steiner, those types of schools are private schools.
Okay. And
although they fall under certain laws as far as what they provide and so forth and how they provide it, I think that the public system, the traditional education system, has to be tweaked, so to speak, to make sure that kids are getting whatever standards are given, that they're all meeting those standards. A traditional teacher has a responsibility to take a group of children through a standardized curriculum and try and get that entire group of kids out the back end all at the same level. I don't feel that children learn that way.
I can't. I don't think so either.
People don't learn that way. We all have kinesthetic or audio, different ways of learning things. And so I think that was one of the things that Maria Montessori, who started this whole Montessori program, really started to recognize the psychological aspects of what was going on there and how children were learning, and began to develop things that allowed children to learn at their own rates.
Okay. Do you think religion has a place in school, in our current school system? I would say, I'm going to go ahead and speak for me.
Yeah.
I would say absolutely not. It doesn't. Because there are various different walks of life. Like me, for myself, I'm more of a spiritual person, not your contemporary religious person. I don't deal with religion in any shape, form, or fashion because you might be something completely different from myself. You could have went on the other side of the world and found something that works for you, and you no longer deal with a certain sect of religion.
Mm-hmm.
And I think whenever we just throw it back in our school system, because that's what our politicians say that they are, and the world and the country should follow that same ideology. I think, no, absolutely not.
It's interesting. So this is a huge rabbit hole that we could get into and take up tons of time just talking about that.
Yeah.
What's interesting to me anyway, having traveled and lived all over, is that religion has its aspect in society. It always has. But every country had obviously their own take on it.
Yeah.
I mean, I've experienced Buddhism, Shintoism, Taoism, you name it. I've been involved in countries that practice these different aspects.
Mm-hmm.
In most of the Montessori schools, and there are a group of Montessori schools that follow a religious curriculum. I was never in one of those schools, and so we were actually at for the most part, religion was never brought into the classroom.
It shouldn't be, if you ask me.
We left that up to families and whatever. I mean, understand, for example, when I was in Tokyo, a brilliant school there, and I taught elementary for the most part. I was an elementary teacher. Those were ages of children from 6 to 12. And my wife is a teacher of 3 to 6 year olds, so what we would consider kindergarten, I guess. We didn't celebrate religious holidays. We didn't have any form of traditional religious teaching. And most of the schools were like that. We allowed, I had 60 some different nationalities of families.
Yeah.
So you're exposed to a wealth of different information and knowledge from parents and friends, and it got to a point where if you were to celebrate every religious holiday, you'd be doing nothing but celebrating religious holidays.
Yeah, ain't that the truth?
So we didn't have any of that. We said, listen, we will celebrate national ideas, national thoughts, national. Yeah. So for example, in Japan, we would have, we would bring in, they have a type of food that they have, they call it mochi. It's pounded rice that they add sugar to, and they make them into sweets, or they put it in ice cream. There's lots of different things. We would bring in some guys to do this mochi pounding, and the kids would get to participate in it.
Okay.
So we'd celebrate nationalities, really, more than anything. and
Culture.
their culture, exactly. That's what we.
And I think that's what we lack in America. But then you would have to ask yourself, what's American culture? Totally different story for another day. But
right.
I just think because religion is surrounded by belief. This person may believe this, that person may believe that. But I think in school, it's an understanding that everybody's going to get educated.
Mm-hmm.
It's all about your education. So I don't see how or why one needs to stand up and pray, and this isn't an attack. It's just something that I've been thinking about. I just think go to school, learn what you're supposed to learn, and call it a day. Go home and practice whatever faith you want to practice. But on another question, I was reading earlier this week. That was going and this blew my mind. The SAT was created by a eugenicist. I can't remember his name, but do you think testing out of school is necessary?
What do you mean by testing?
Like you have to I know I've read also that tests are designed for one to fail. I don't know how true that is. I can't remember where I read it, so don't hold me on this. But I guess I'm asking if you don't pass this test, you can't graduate high school.
Well, this is another aspect of Montessori that's completely different than the norm. We don't have any testing. We don't do tests. We don't issue grades.
What?
No, there's no grading system. I'm not going to say that you're a better student than this child based on test results. Not everybody can take tests.
Yeah.
Personally, I was not a good test taker.
Me either. I'm a good studier though.
Testing is from my perspective, testing is, and again, this goes back to this idea of a curriculum. I'm feeding you this information. I'm the expert. I feed it to the children, and they regurgitate that up on a piece of paper to tell me whether or not they understood what was going on.
Mm-hmm.
There's an old cartoon of a man sitting in front of different animals, an elephant, and there's a fish in a bowl, and there's a bird and a squirrel. And they say, okay, for your first exam, your first test, climb that tree. They're built differently. People learn, as we had said, they learn differently. Mm-hmm. They understand things differently. My job as a Montessori teacher, that gave me a lot more flexibility than perhaps a traditional teacher would have.
Yeah.
And this isn't speaking for all traditional teachers, but the majority of teachers, I think, would probably agree.
Right.
That if a child is learning differently, some kids are not born readers. They don't read as well as other children. Some kids.
Hell, I didn't either. I stayed grounded so much. That's why that's where my love of reading came from.
Some kids don't do math as well as other children.
Yeah,
this is true. They don't understand the concepts as well as some others that grasp it right away.
Right.
They think differently. Adults do this too. I mean, it's a given. But what we had to do as Montessorians is that we were able to work with these children individually and find an aspect or understand the child. They used to say, follow the child. You understand how this child learns and then present them those concepts in a way that they get and want to grab onto. So we had that flexibility. Whereas if you have a group of kids, you're all trying to keep them on the same page all the time and then test them on that material, there are kids that start to excel and kids that fall back.
Yeah. And guess what? Most of the attention goes to the kids that's excelling.
That would be sort of a natural outcome.
The kid who's lacking, they're gonna lack for a while and if you look at the current classrooms, they're so compacted, so crowded with kids. How can a teacher, and even if she has a parapro in there for help, how can they really get to those kids that need help?
It's difficult.
Yeah, but on that note, we're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back. had something going on in the back. I don't know what it was. Sound like a Cookie Monster was trying to knock the door down. But again, you know, we're here with Mr. Russ Uhl, and we're talking about school education, the difference in, what do you call it? The school system, the system that you was teaching over in
Montessori.
Montessori and our traditional American school system. But so in this country, Russ, what would you say happened to follow the child as far as education goes?
Well, it's very difficult for a teacher here to try and follow individual children. Their whole goal is to get a group of children through a set curriculum, out the door, educated.
Okay.
They don't have in most schools, they don't have the flexibility to take time throughout the day because they're busy, you know, obviously disseminating material to the kids.
What would you say was, and then, you know, I'll ask these couple of questions and we'll go back to self-actualization.
Mm-hmm.
What do you say the biggest, what do you think, just from your perspective, a big issue with the American school system is today?
They got rid of handwriting, cursive handwriting.
Can you explain to the Carbon Ether viewers what you mean by that? Our stars, I'm sorry, y'all.
Most schools, my understanding now is, have gone to print and have gotten away from cursive. And eventually, I think the idea is to obviously go more and more to keyboards and typing, and which we taught typing.
Yeah, we had to learn that in school also.
My kids were not big on screen time at all. We don't allow the kids to have phones in school. And they all have phones, but we ask that they obviously don't spend lots of time on screen time. And I think, so cursive handwriting has a great deal of neuroscience behind it, how it, you know, influences the brain and so forth. There was at one point when they had gotten rid of cursive, I think that they hadn't foreseen was they weren't practicing any type of cursive handwriting to where kids could sign things. And so people didn't have a signature, they print. Now in Montessori, we used to call cursive writing a controlled scribble. And the reason is in print, if you try this yourself, you'll see that the pen or pencil leaves the paper constantly. It's a tapping because you're separating each one of the letters. Whereas in cursive, once that pen or pencil hits the paper, it stays there.
Oh, yeah, it does make sense when you think about it like that.
There's that flow and that idea has a great influence on the brain.
Okay.
And so that was one of the things that they did. I think there is a problem with reading in schools.
We talked about, not to interrupt your wisdom, but last week on our very first show,
I saw that.
We talked about the reading. Deep Hope really laid out some great, some wonderful information detailing like this reading thing. But I think the reading thing has always been a problem in America, especially for my community. And this ain't trying to get on the whole black and white thing. This is a conversation from life experiences and what have you. So, but I know for my community, it's always been a thing because we're not taking the time to sit down, as Dee said last week, sit down with your kids for a few minutes, give them a newspaper, you know, ask them to read something to you, then tell them to, ask them to explain to you what it means. And that's when it really starts to make sense to you, like, hey, my child is behind. So I think the moment we get into that, the better off we'll be. Before we go back into the self-realization or what have you, I got one more question. Why do you think, between the two, who do you think was excelling more, being when you was a teacher abroad and versus teaching here? Who do you think excelled more as far as the students, or did you see any difference?
No, I didn't really see a lot of difference. I saw a lot of children that learned differently than others, but all of my kids got to levels that if I was to tell you where these kids were, you probably wouldn't believe it.
Skyrocket brilliance.
all kids are brilliant
Yeah.
if given the right opportunities. We had mentioned things that I think that education is doing is, and this isn't just a process of education, I think it's a process of our whole society, is because of things like we had mentioned, screen time and lack of reading and lack of being outside, going outdoors, we have lost our ability to imagine.
Yeah, and for those that don't know, it's been scientifically proven that imagination trumps reality every single time. I know for me, to imagine creating, to imagine writing my first book, I had no idea of how to write a book. I've never just sat down and wrote in a format of a book. You know, I used to write poetry. I used to write those hot rhymes. You know, I'm still hard to beat now when it comes to those lyrics. But when I sat down and used my imagination, how can I write my book? You know, I'm a Gemini, so I think outside the box anyways. I wrote my first book called Titles on a Page, and it was just nothing but each title told its own story. Mm-hmm. And that's what it's all about to me. I think sometimes we need to get away from what one might consider the traditional norm. Oh, I gotta write a book this way, or I've gotta do this way. Mm-hmm. No, man, be creative. Think outside the box. That's how Carbon Ether Podcast came about. When it came to the name, had to think outside the box. Yes, it was created by a so-called black man, but I'm a melanated man. But it's created by us, but it's for everyone to come on this podcast. No matter your walk of life or what have you, you can come on here and tell your story. That's what it's all about. That's how Mr. Russ got here to come on and talk about teaching. But anyways, I'll digress and pass it back to you.
Well, so with a lack of imagination, the more that a child's imagination is condensed or limited, the less they're able to think outside the box, the less they're able to reason, the less they're able to discern different points of view. So I spent a great deal of time when we're talking about self-realization or self-actualization. I spent a lot of time with children talking about slowing down, talking about looking inside, using their imagination. And I find that now, having been at a school here, that's really lacking. Children have a hard time if they were to, I hate to use the word meditate, but that's basically what you're doing, is you're shutting off all this external stuff. Mm-hmm. And focusing on just nothing, simply observing. It was very, very difficult, and I've seen it become more difficult for kids to just sit still, for adults to just sit still.
Hey, but the drugs they're giving the kids in this country, in this day and time, rather, I don't know what the hell they expect.
Well, I hate to sound like my grandfather, but we used to be told, go on outside. Go
That's
play.
it.
Get outside and play.
That's it. That's what we did. Don't come in until that street light come on.
Yeah. And I think there's a great lack of that nowadays. Kids don't go outside anymore.
Phones, video games.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate.
So they're taking that internal awareness and that internal inquisitive mind, imagination, and they're putting it out here, and they're using this as their
AI.
brain.
Yeah, and they're putting it into AI,
which is unfortunate. And that's the direction I see us going in. That
what kind of devastation do you think that's going to cause? It's going to have later on.
Well, it'll be horrible because you'll have mindless, unthinking zombies that follow the pack instead of.
Yeah, we got those already, but I think if we ever, as a species, try to really encapsulate like the higher self, the elevation, when we're looking at self-actualization and self-realization. As I said, the psychology behind self-realization is simply becoming aware of your true self. How do you think, what do you think, or how do you think we can ever accomplish that?
First of all, you got to get back to understanding yourself. And that realization of self has to come, you have to not look out here.
It's all internal.
You have to look in here.
Ain't that what it says in that book, Know Thyself?
Mm-hmm. So that comes from, people say, oh, I can't meditate, or I don't understand. You're simply observing. That's how you start.
Mm-hmm.
You take some deep breaths, you relax. They talk about thoughts. Well, I can't because I have all these thoughts come up. What you'll start to realize, and I'll give you an example. I'll give you a couple examples of some experiments you can try. One good one is settle yourself, go somewhere quiet, relax, deep breaths, just focus on your breathing.
Mm-hmm.
And observe, just simply watch. You'll hear things will interrupt you, thoughts will interrupt you, but just watch them. Because what will happen is these thoughts arise like bubbles, like clouds. They get into your process, your field of view, your thought process. If you don't latch onto them, because the first thing that happens is you start to relax and you think, oh, geez, I need to call so-and-so, and you go off on this little adventure. If you let that thought arise,
mm-hmm.
watch that thought, the thought goes away. And the concept is of watching this is, where does it come from and where does it go?
Don't the universe, from what I'm understanding, being a person of spirituality, the universe has already given the thought before, or had the thought before it was given unto you. But I would like to know where it goes, if it goes back into the universe, and is it reciprocated with like karma or what have you?
So this is the interesting first experiment. I'll let you try. And your viewers can try this as well. When you get to this state and these thoughts are coming and going and you're simply observing, the one thing you can say to yourself is, I wonder what the next thought will be. And when you do that, there will be a little pause, because this thought generator goes, wait, what? There will be a stillness there for just a little bit. And you just simply do that again. Oh, I see that thought, okay. Well, what will the next one be like? What will the next one smell like? What will the next thought be about?
Mm.
So you have these little pauses. When you get one of those little pauses, ask yourself, where am I? Where am I in my body? Where am I located?
I might scare the hell out of somebody.
What you will hopefully perceive,
okay.
You'll think, well, am I in, and it could be silly. Am I in my foot? Am I in my head? Where in my head am I? Am I in my heart? Where am I in there? You will start to find that you are not located there. And that will be the first eye-opener where you think, well, then where the heck am I?
Wow.
The second experiment I will give you, and I will tell you how your mind, and this is another subject for a story for another day, because we can get off on a tangent with this. And we'll try this right now, just so your viewers can also understand how this works.
Stars.
Your stars. So you stars at home, try this. Your thoughts and the energy, the attention, the focus that you put on something causes an energetic response. This is now known physics. Your thoughts have waves just like everything around you does.
Salute to Terrence Howard.
If you want to prove this, here's a little meditation for you.
Okay.
And you don't have to close your eyes and om and any of that stuff. And by the way, that's simply a focus. It just gets your head away from the thoughts long enough. Exactly.
Okay.
It's same focusing on your breathing. They have a 4-count breath. You inhale for 4, that sort of thing. That just takes your focus to some
before we get to that
point. Yeah. You don't have to get all that involved. I want you to picture yourself in your mind. Picture yourself at home. You're in your house, and you can be anywhere in your house, but I want you to envision yourself going into your kitchen. Okay? Look around your kitchen. You recognize where your stuff in your kitchen is, your refrigerator, your stove, or whatever. I want you to turn in your mind and look at the fridge. And you see the color of your fridge, the handles, you hear the fridge, maybe you hear it humming. Walk to your refrigerator. And I'm gonna have you open the door.
Ain't no food in it.
But there is something on the shelf in the fridge. It's a lemon. There's a lemon sitting there.
Yeah, I see it.
I want you to reach out, take the lemon, and I want you to hold the lemon up to your face. I want you to feel the coolness of the skin. It's been in the fridge, it's kind of cold. I want you to look at the texture of the skin. You can see all the little pores in the lemon. You can see the bright yellow, maybe the green, whitish ends.
Right.
Put the lemon to your nose in your mind and smell it. You smell the lemon, that lemon scent. I want you to take that lemon and walk to the countertop. And then wherever you keep your knives, I want you to take a knife out. I want you to hold the lemon carefully, and I want you to start to cut the lemon in half. And as you do, you see the lemon peels, spritzes a little bit, and you see the lemon begin to cut open, and it falls into 2 pieces. You have one in your hand. You can see the seeds that are cut in half. There's juice running out of the lemon. Take that half and smell that half. Now it's very, very strong.
Yeah.
You can see the juice probably running out onto your hand. Take that lemon, open your mouth, and bite into that lemon hard.
Oh, yeah.
Lemon juice is into your mouth. It's very sour. Yeah. Now, for you and your stars, you have saliva in your mouth?
Shit, yeah. On that note, we out of here.
Now,
Boy, you killed it.
Now here's my questions.
Yeah.
1, do you have a lemon in your hand or in your mouth?
No.
2, you have spit in your mouth?
Hey, guys, salivate like a bug.
Yeah.
That's all right.
You have had a thought, an imaginative thought, that has caused a physiological change in your body.
Yeah.
Your mind has convinced your body that you have bitten into a lemon. Now, ask yourself, if I go to the mirror every day when I get up and I say, God, you're a dumbass. You're ugly. You look funny. Your clothes are crappy looking. What do you think is happening to you?
You're starting to believe that. You're creating this reality.
That's correct.
This self-realization, you're doing this to yourself.
That's correct. And everyone does.
Wow.
Now, if you were to go the opposite direction and talk about, and you look
But
great.
why don't we do that? Because if you do that, especially in the midst of company, a group of people, whatever, oh, then you're conceited. You're conceited. Oh my God, you're such a vanity. This vanity that you display.
Sure.
You know, why do you think people knock you when you have that self-confidence in? And then we're going to get out of here after this one.
Because they're programmed to believe that. You're programmed in a certain way from the time you're a kid, starting with your parents.
Damn.
Who were programmed that way from the time they were kids, and their parents who programmed them that way.
Then how do we I don't know, because of...
How do you break out of that?
But but in this country, you know what I'm saying, anything that deviates from the norm is oh, you know,
do you think
the world gonna fall a damn apart.
Do you think that you're being programmed with everything you watch, everything you hear, everyone you listen to, all of that external stuff? Do you think you're constantly being programmed?
Shit, man, I can't even answer that. Probably.
Absolutely. So how do you break free from that? You turn in and you change the story.
Right.
Change the story. The past doesn't exist. The future doesn't exist. The only thing that exists is right now. And from this moment forward, reprogram yourself. Your brain is nothing other than a big computer. And how you program that computer is how that thing executes. You just proved it with a lemon.
Dang.
If you can prove that with an imaginary lemon, why can't you program yourself to be a better person, to be happy, happiness doesn't come from outside. Everybody believes happiness
all
is,
inside.
when I get a car, I'll be happy.
Nope.
No.
I don't care about things like that. But
That's not where happiness resides.
But yeah, and we'll pick up on that next time. But we got to get out of here on this one. Mr. Rasul, Arsenio Hall Fist Pump. What a great show. But until next time, may the universe continue to favor you, and we'll see you soon. Thank you again for tuning in, and please leave any comments for us that you like. If there's any questions you want to ask, you can drop them in the comments. He'll see them, and we can go from there. Thank you again, and have a great evening.
Take care.